movements would lead a bunch of nationalism for people that were being shifted all about. Nobody was really where they were from because there was 500 years of war in Europe and everybody was getting migrated consistently and merged in with Jews that had to convert into the religions, and then everybody's getting mixed together. But Mazzini in the 1800s, he's writing the doctrine. His mother's a rich woman they can't trace any further back. Okay? His father's in the church. Okay? He's writing letters to Albert Pike and the KKK. Albert Pike has a plan in the 1860s that was discovered in 1955 about the 3 world wars and how we foment them. How it would start off with the war against Germany and then a war against Nazis and then the 3rd World War where it was Zionism versus Islam versus atheists, all in a battle. Well, what's he doing? Mazzini, in those letters, you look into Mazzini, what's he doing? He's creating a nationalist ideology for all these different people. And the subsets of that ideology go on to become things like Young Turks, who would then go on to kill everybody in Turkey. All those Armenians that got murdered. The Young Turks come from the ideology that led to Young Europe, that came from Young Europe. Now, here's what's even crazier. After a while, the Young Turks murders are happening, and the Young Turks are taking over, and the Don Maids and Sabotage Zevi, we have to go back to in a second. Let's go back to Sabotage Zevi right now. The corporations that were running all this slavery, from their elk, from their descendants, come Sabotage Zevi. His father worked for those corporations. Sabotage Zevi is connected to a lot of networks, like the Hasmonean League, a trading league in Europe that was Jewish, the Bremen League, another trading league in Europe that was Jewish. He's tied to a lot of these super hypermobile people in Europe. And what he does is he is creating Frankism, some early Frankism version, where it's like the opposite of good, to bring in the Messiah faster. They call him the Messiah, right, in 1666. Half the world's Jews are following his cult, okay? And in that cult, he goes to Turkey, where Mehmed IV, who's a grandson of an Ottoman sultan who allowed the Jews to come after the 1491 thing, and then he made it illegal to talk about Jews. So you have to question his grandfather, and then his mother is Roxana, who was an infiltrator from Ukraine, who was a slave bride at a 50, who becomes the first fucking empress that could marry a sultan from slavery, a redhead girl from Khazaria. You know what I told you about infiltrating and their harem girls and their little Sarahs, Esther's all through history. Her son brings in Sabotage Zevi. Sabotage Zevi creates the Donma. And Sabotage Zevi's doing so much disgusting shit that even Mehmed IV, who's tied to these networks, tells that Sabotage Zevi, you have to convert. That's always their bullshit story when they want to let somebody stay and keep running their dirty business. Convert. Instead of like, I should kill you for raping all these girls. No, just convert and you'll be okay. He converts in a fake conversion to Islam. And then Mehmed IV, an Ottoman sultan who gets a lot of respect, he names him the great Effendi Mehmed himself, like the great and honorable Muhammad. He gives Sabotage Zevi that kind of name. Why would you do that unless you're a dirtbag? This dude was raping children. He was creating a cult that had people doing atrocities, having orgies and raping women on their wedding nights, peeing on them. They're trying to do every atrocity to bring in, and this is after 100 years of a European ice age, right? Where it was super cold, people were struggling, the population lowered. This is after a century of the Black Plague, and the population lowered. But then it's also after their expansions everywhere else. Their network's getting even more intermobile after the exile. They're all through the middle of Europe now. So they're influencing little communities all over the place. And Poland and Germany at this time, Poland from 1600 to 1900 was the Jewish capital of the world. Germany, Habsburg Germany, their little locations in Denmark and Spain and different places were the safest places in all of Europe for Jews. You understand? So when we're talking about Germany, Poland Empire, and Austrian Empire, those were Jewish-controlled Habsburgs. Why are we even playing games with that family like we don't know who they really are? With their mysterious start that's not the mysterious because you can take them back to the Carolingians. And Charlemagne, and we know what Charlemagne is. They're in that same network with the Rocheforts, the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds. They're all in the same network. They were funded by Rothschilds. The Rothschilds funded the Vatican in 1832. But before that, the Sabotage Zevi's people take over. That group of people that Don May helped lead to eventually become the Young Turks. They get rid of them. The Ottoman vizier that allows that to happen is the mentor of a Rudolf Glauer, a Jew from the British spy community. He's training under this man and that man, Rudolf, is training under a Sephardic merchant family in Thessalonica, in Greece. He's going back and forth between Turkey and Greece, learning from an Ottoman vizier who's an Islamic mystic Sufi guy. Then he dies and gives him everything. He gives Rudolf Glauer one of the most important mystic collections of Islamic works in the history of the world. He gives it to a British spy. Because they're all working together. They always have been. At this leadership level. Rudolf Glauer then creates the Thule Society in Germany as a Nazi. So then those Nazis go around saying they're the Aryan super race. The fucking Aryans are Iranians, who in the first place, I showed you, gave these goddamn Greeks, Turks, fucking Italians Mithraism in the first place. It's always been their like sun worship bullshit through Mithraism, which that themselves was coming from Babylonians and other people that were invading the region. It's pretty simple to understand once you start seeing what's happening in the trickle. Like, it's one thing leads to another intentionally. This is a global plot where they're seeding colonies everywhere, seeding ideology as they spread it, allowing things like slavery, and then now all the bankers that built all their wealth that led to the United Nations, the things to fight their young Germany nationalism, which was just like the young Irish, young Turk. It was just more mythology that people that had just fucking got there to hyper galvanize them into fighting for a cause that they didn't even really believe in because they really weren't even those people. But if you convince enough young people, that's why when you see China goes and gets a young Red Army of young youths to convince, Russia gets a youth army, Nazis get a youth army, they need to convince these kids as children. Just like the Janissaries did in Turkey, where they wouldn't let anybody get married and they took them at 6 and adopted them, and then they'd make them fight for them, and then when they're retired, they didn't go have a family. Because you need young people, like Spartans needed 6-year-olds, like Knights Templars needed 6-year-olds. You really need a young, super brainwashed identity. And then they realized at this point of Mazzini in the 1850s, we can do this to the whole world. We don't have to keep this a secret club. We can industrialize this and make a network where even the government's military has these secret arms and this nationalism spread to each new country. So it was like an early version of Bernays propaganda that would later go from Italy to America back to Europe through the German Jew Joseph Goebbels, who's related to William Penn and that mother of his that was a Jewish merchant from Amsterdam, the Gobelin family. So we're getting played on an international scale by a relatively small network of merchants, the same way we were all through the Viking era when they were slaving people, and the Radhanite era when they were going all the way to China slaving people, and then those continuations, their descendants are who control our world today. And people can't see that they're all from the same network. But after World War II, what did we get? The boogeyman they created with Nazi, who was from Nazi Hitler, who then lived and got to go chill out in one of their old vacation homes. That shit led to the United Nations. It led to the Rockefellers donating the United Nations building. It led to all the intelligence communities in the world. Those intelligence communities then became a nationalized, institutionalized version of the secret intelligence networks that the Radhanites, the Assassins, the Templars, and the Vikings already were with their hypermobility. Now they just go CIA and Pentagon and MI6. You guys send, or NSA and MI6, you guys send your little scouts all over the world, much in the same way that their missionaries did earlier for the Portuguese when they discovered Benin, Nigeria in peace, or the Catholic missionaries that discovered Mexico City in peace, and then they start slaving them both for fucking 200 years and taking all their wealth. It was a church missionary spy. There's been merchant missionary spies. And those people were all fake fucking religious people. The Templars, fake Catholics. The fucking Assassins, fake Islam. Were fucking Persians. The fucking Radhanites, fake Jews, slaving and eunuching everybody. The fucking Vikings, fake ass whatever they were, sacrificing all kinds of people and also chopping off dicks, and then they killed themselves for the shaman of the little clique. The Viking kings weren't even in charge. Their texts say that the Viking king would kill himself on the spot if the shaman told him to. Because the shamans and the scribes are who's been running this entire thing. The motherfuckers like Mazzini. The authors like Albert Pike, it's never been presidents and kings, it's been bankers and scribes. Because the temple banker was a scribe. The temple banker became the Templar Knights, the Templar Assassins became the church's financial institutions. And it's so obvious now, you got the funding of Rothschilds, the bankers, Medici, wool merchants, to the Vatican, and to the Habsburgs. They're funding, everything these people are doing is being funded by a small network of men. And they can't call them just Jews because they go backwards. We see the Phoenicians and Celts and Norman Vikings. And there's a network of people. And they're intermarrying their elite lines. So maybe Genghis Khan's niece is married to a fucking Charlemagne cousin who's married to a Khazarian princess. And then they just know. They don't give a fuck about any national boundaries. They change that when they want to on a whim. What they care about is the maintenance of power and the centralization of the currency all over the world. And what the central banks give them, and what the United Nations and NATO gives them. And don't forget the 1800s, we had the Berlin Conference, where the same way they had the Treaty of Tordesillas, they had the Berlin Conference in Germany, while all these European countries been all over the world fighting each other, supposedly. They decided to have the Berlin Conference and say, hey, let's divide Africa, and then all go invade it, and split this in 6 different ways for all these countries up here. But I thought they were just fighting, but no, they're just cousins. They're killing the impoverished people everywhere they go. And like when they took over America, you have idiot groups of 150,000 Indians fighting another 150,000 Indians with 1,000 Europeans involved. They're having us kill each other in mass numbers, not to mention, as these Jews spread everywhere, what they don't tell you is this lines up with the Dark Ages. I mean, not the Dark Ages, the Black Plague. What this lines up with is also the cholera outbreaks. So every time they get somewhere, they're acting like it's just happening. But we have documentation since the Hittite days that Scythians and Hittites and Mongols love to use chemical warfare to dip their arrows in plague bodies, to catapult plague bodies over the walls while they're surrounding the city. And how did the Spaniards fight the Mexicans? The pre-Mexicans, how did they fight them? They couldn't even beat them straight up. They had to poison them. Not only did they poison them, they would also surround their cities so in all the routes and supplies so they couldn't get food, just like I showed you in video 1. The admonitions of Ypres. They know how to surround you, cut off your food supply, poison you, take over, and move into your shit. Then they're your leaders for your new semi-migratory population. Then they want to act like there's been continuity in your place from the last people, but it's just the women that got raped. That's the continuity you have. Is it a maternal DNA? But the Y DNA is now all new. Like Latin America is all mostly R1B men now. Like they're fucking Spaniards and British men. Their DNA is not even their native fathers anymore. They're only their native mothers. And they treat their native mothers like shit because they were taught that. So they're acting like these fucking Jews and Islam and Persians all the fucking beating their goddamn women. They're acting like that over here. Machismo. Nobody fucking acts like that in Africa. You don't see niggas beating up women in Africa. Are you crazy? Not until they get their guns from the CIA. They get drugs from the CIA. They get Arabs dropping off guns and missiles and RPGs and their goddamn sick religions. Then they start doing all the same shit they do. It's an ideology. It's not a race because you see it's a fucking network from all these places. Although I'd like to say the Abbasid Empire was mostly just Persians. The same shit that's been taken over since Xerxes and fucking Darius and Artaxerxes and fucking the Susa weddings packed with Greece. We're having a problem where even maybe 4,000 years ago, this population of the world wasn't the way it is. Now it's 90% different. So at the time, 4,300 years ago, the whole population of the white race was basically here. Okay? And when they spread as Yamnaya and Belbeeker, Corded Ware, and then the Athanasia, the Anaphanasia cultures, and the BMAC culture spread from here, that's when these new races started, right? The R1B haplogroup, R1A haplogroups, they weren't even existing before the Aryans get there and start creating a new race. Okay? And just like those Semitic populations were tiny until the Aryans got mixed in with them and then started spreading and conquering. But it's been a constant problem we've had from this region that now is expanded into our ideology all over the world. Everybody's believing a religion that was written in this region of the world. Zoroastrianism written here, Islam written here, Christianity written here, all written in the same zone. Even the Homer's epics was written up here in the Turkey-Greek borders. Okay, so this little fucking region right here has been dictating the ideology and everything we think for 4,300 years. But that's really what happened. I think I covered it all from 1492 to modern day. But basically, what we had was the temple banks are now DARPA, where it used to just be control of the currency, the scribal hoods, and the intelligence networks along routes back in the Bronze Age. Now it's DARPA controlling everything from a governmental standpoint because the government is completely created to maintain the system they were running when they were enslaving us back then. That's why nothing works no matter how you vote, and that's why both sides, communists or capitalists, are controlled by the same people. BRICS, China, will go to the Swiss bank. It'll go to the Swiss BIS. It'll go to the Swiss BIS. It'll go to the same place where the Habsburgs came from. Same place where all the Templars ran to. That's where China's money's going to go and Russia's money's going to go because they're all working together.